Welcome back, everybody. This is Brother Mean here. Today we're doing a pre-build, if you will, for Wrath of the Righteous. This is Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous and early beta access. We had a viewer request specifically asked for a Tiefling build that uses Sword Saint Purist, level 20, and Angel, 10 ranks, of course, and it wanted to see what I could come up with. I'm afraid I'm going to dust off an old build for you, buddy, and make it even better by using, of course, everything that Wrath of the Righteous has to offer. This is an old build that I've done. You can watch my old two videos separately covering this. Uh, uh, it was a build that was actually three different builds in one, so to speak. So what it was we were comparing a Purist Sword Saint build with Sword Saint 12 levels, an 8 level dip, as much as you can call that a dip, into two different classes. Either 8 levels of Vivisectionist for some sneak attack damage and some access to some kick-ass spells of mutagen, things of that nature. Or we could do 8 levels of Eldritch Scoundrel, which still gave us another spell book, gave us a lot of rogue abilities against sneak attack damage. Again, both builds were viable. The Purist build was viable, and I broke those down in two separate videos. Feel free to watch the most updated version of that because I go in greater detail explaining why I like each of them and I like them for different reasons. This one is the Purist, and what we're doing with this one is we're literally wielding two weapons, so you're going to be a two-weapon wielder before the end of the build is over. The downside is we really need to kind of talk about that right off the bat. In the previous video, the previous build, I should say, we called those characters Kukri Saints. And the reason for that is because instead of being a sword, they were wielding Kukris, dual Kukris at that, so they could capitalize on some serious melee damage. They were basically self-buff bots. They were using their spells, whether they came from the Sword Saint spellbook or from either the Vivisectionist or the Eldritch Scoundrel spellbooks, respectively, to self-buff up. The mutagen, of course, being a big boon for dexterity build. The other attributes that were, of course, associated with being at least 12 levels in, which would be this far into a Sword Saint, is extremely powerful. And the reason we stopped at 12 was because of two reasons. One, the spell progression isn't one of the reasons. The actual base attack bonus progression was. These classes, the Eldritch Scoundrel, the Vivisectionist, and of course the Sword Saint, have 3/4 progression, at least in Kingmaker they do. What does that mean? That means that literally at every 4 levels in, the first level they don't get any base attack bonus progression, and then at 2, 3, and 4 they get 1 increase to their BAB. So again, it'd be basically a BAB of 0, a 1, a 2, a 3. And then it repeats for another 4 levels the same way. So again, nothing here, so it'd be again a 3, carrying over from the 4 here. So this would be 3 BAB, then 4, 5, 6. You get the idea. So the natural stopping point was literally increments of 4. So this is, again, why some people will, for example, do like a 4-level dip of Dragon Disciple for some builds. Because, again, Eldritch Scions, for example, have that 3/4 progression, like a Sword Saint would. So it's that and then some. And the reason for the 8 levels instead of just stopping at 4 was to get the extra sneak attack love and some other fiddly bits that we got from those other casters. And 12 levels of Sword Saint was kind of the cutting point for a reason. Sword Saints, for those of you that don't know, can use their intelligence modifier, this +7 that you're seeing over here, as armor. They call it candy defense. It's something they unlock at level 1, which is this ability right here. And what happens is whatever your intelligence modifier is, and whatever level of Sword Saint you have, whichever is the lowest of the two, is how much candy defense you have. So you see that I'm level 20, but the lowest number is my +7, hence the dodge of +7 for candy defense. The reason for the 12 then was because I could theoretically get my character to have enough of an intelligence with gear and buffs and what have you, to an intelligence that was high enough where I had a +12 here. So that 12 would be the stopping point because, again, that's the maximum amount of armor. Yeah, it turns out I could actually get to 13. With a little freaky deaky evil playthrough, I could have actually gotten it all the way up to a 15. And that's a big +15 here. I'm just saying, that's a huge ass number. But it wasn't fun. The +15, A, you'd have to be evil, B, you'd have to use a staff instead of a good weapon for that matter. So it made a whole lot of sense to actually go back to 12. So now, because a Sword Saint, for those of you that don't know, they literally get to choose a weapon, and you see that I have chosen daggers. That's the thing we need to talk about first, buddy. So Shaitan, this is for you. Please change this as you see fit, but you have to choose a weapon. The weapon that would make sense would be the Kukri, for a variety of reasons. Because we're going to 2-weapon wield, which means Kukri would be the ideal weapons. The downside is you don't get Kukris in this game very quickly, and I don't know how many are available in the game. Whereas in Kingmaker, of course, I had a mod that allowed me to basically exploit and find out where all the kukris were at, as far as not where they were at, but what was available, I should say, in game. Well, I can do that to an extent in this one, but they haven't unlocked everything for one thing, and then the other is I have played through quite a bit of the game so far, and have found the kukris to drop to be lacking. And you may say, well, who cares? You have as a Magus, sort of saying being a subclass of Magus, the ability to buff your weapon. So until you find your second magical kukri, just work with the crappy one they start you with. Well, that's the downside. The very start of this game, they strip all your gear from you, the bastards, and they don't give them back. So you don't get whatever weapon you choose. Normally in Kingmaker, whatever weapon you pick, and you can literally pick any melee weapon as a sword saint at level 1, and they will give you one. Period. Because again, you're a sword saint and you need that weapon to progress. So if you wanted an S stock, they'll give you an S stock. If you wanted an elven curve blade, doesn't matter if you shouldn't have had training in an elven curve blade, they'll give it to you. Bastard sword, sure, they could care less. Go for a great club, whatever you want. That's the whole point. So kukri was easy enough to start off with one. And again, same here. However, they take it away from you, and they don't give you another one anytime soon. Now, again, this is early beta, so mistakes will happen. Maybe the devs just didn't think about that. And again, this is one rare example of one class, subclass even for that matter, that gets boned by the devs just doing something that anyone else would normally not even think about. Well, everyone will just pick up another weapon when they fall into the basement and progress from there, work their way into a better weapon. But sword saints again have that restriction where to really get the best abilities, things like canny defense, you have to be wielding at least in one of your little fisties the weapon that you have picked. So you're what they call chosen weapon. So that chosen weapon is kind of important. Now, in the earlier part of the game, again, without giving too much spoilers, I have found a laundry list of weapons. For instance, I found not only daggers, there's a short sword or two that I could find, dueling sword was out there, scimitars, but that was there for a strength-based build because scimitars can't be weapon finessed in this game. You could have other things, hand axes, light picks. I found for a strength-based build, again, a falcata was a solid choice. Light maces were there. Rapier is a solid choice. But the downside for most of these, and then this is really the crux here, buddies, pay attention, is if you want a 2-weapon wield, which again is kind of on you, I'm going that route, doesn't mean you have to. But if you want to do this build proper, you need to have, or should have, I should say, one weapon in your offhand, which is this one here, be a light weapon. So you see how at the very top there on the right it says light? That is important. Why? Because if it's a light weapon, doesn't have to be a light in both hands, but since we're going to do 2 of the same weapon, so again, kukri, both were light, dagger, short sword, that works. Rapier does not. It's not a light weapon. It's weapon finessable, but not light. The reason you need a light weapon in the offhand is if you're 2-weapon wielding, you'd be suffering a -4 penalty to all your swings on both sides here if this was not a light weapon. It doesn't have to be a light weapon and a light weapon, as I said. So it could be like a rapier here and then a dagger there. That's fine. But the reason that we go dual kukri build or dual dagger in this build is because all the buffs, weapon focus and weapon specialization that we've invested in with our feats to get the dagger in your main hand to be badass also work for the dagger in the offhand. So it makes sense to double up, if you will. So again, while you could switch that up a little bit and have some fun, so go rapier, go dagger, go rapier, short sword, that would be fine. It's still weird. And I'd rather just do 2 short swords or 2 daggers. And with her picture, it actually looks like she's wielding actually 2 daggers, one in her hand and one in her belt. So kind of made sense. The reason for kukris, though, and again, since we can't find them early, they are there. They're in the game. They're just hard to fucking find. Probably have to almost get to town. That's how bad it is, man. If you do that, that's fine, and willing to suffer through that, that's cool. I would not do that. It's on the hardest difficulty, let's just put it that way. But on the core difficulty, you should be okay. Hell, you're good enough with the high dexterity I'm going to give your character, and with your spells and whatnot, and your team supporting you, you could just stand back at a distance and blast with, say, your spells, your cantrips, which are infinite use, with your crossbow that they're going to hand you at the very beginning of the game if you pick the weapon. And again, that'd be okay. You're just not going to have the really good armor and all the other cool little fiddly bits that you get for being the sword saint. It's minor at the early levels, sure, but it still sucks that you don't have it. The reason, though, you go for kukri is because of the crit range on a kukri, and a rapier, and a scimitar, and an S-stock, and a couple dozen other weapons, a couple other weapons, have the highest crit range in the game. For those of you that don't know, that never played a Magus before, we need to explain a couple things. One, crit range is going to be important. I don't mean the ×3, that's also important. It's this number below it. So this is a weapon, a dagger, that literally has double the crit range that it should normally have, because I have improved critical for daggers, as you'll see. And again, you can do the same with kukris. It will double the crit range of any kukri you put in your hand, whether it's your main hand or your offhand. This range, normally for a dagger, if you just look at the dagger itself, you see right up there next to critical hit. It says 19-20 times 2. You notice that's different numbers than we're seeing here. That's part of being a sword saint. But again, go back to the weapon and look at those two numbers, okay? The 19 and 20, that's the real focus here. That means when you roll a 19 or a 20 to hit a target, and if that's good enough to hit a target, because that not always works. A 20 will always hit, by the way, nat 20. But a 19 isn't guaranteed. If you're 19 and your base attack bonus and all the other little attack bonus buffs that you have, whether it's strength or dex and spells and what have you, don't add up to enough with that 19 to equal or exceed the target's armor class, you will whiff. So on the hardest difficulties, those guys have inflated armor stats and dexterity besides. Those bastards are a pain in the ass to fucking hit. So sometimes only on a nat 20 are you going to hit for the longest time anyway, until you really start to get those buff spells up. So again, that sucks. But nat 20 is guaranteed to hit. Now, it's not guaranteed to crit, at least not at the beginning. So how do you crit in this game? So the important part is A, you hit. B, if it's within that crit range. So if you see that 19 and 20 here, if it was a 19 or 20 and that, let's say the 19 was good enough to hit, then what happens is you do what's called confirming the crit. You roll again, the game does it for you, of course, rolls again, a 1d20, and if the second roll is good enough to hit the target, doesn't even have to be a 19 or a 20 again. If it's, if a 4 is good enough to hit the target on the second roll, then you confirm the crit. Chances are to confirm the crit is again going to be another high number. So again, confirming the crit is very uncommon, hence crits are being important and special. But at the end of our build, we'll get the ability to auto-confirm all crits, which is fucking sweet. So again, the higher crit range, the better. The better chance of you hitting, the better. And the reason for that is if I have a crit range that's 17 to 20, and a 17 is good enough, at level 20, I auto-crit every time. There is no re-roll. This naturally rolls a 20 on that second roll. It just says, here you go, here's a 20, and boom, you crit the target. So that's called crit fishing. That's what we're doing here. We're trying to crit as often as possible. Damage is our goal here. And if a Magus, a true Magus, or an Eldritch Scion, for that matter, another subclass of Magus, one of my favorites, is a wizard or sorcerer who can fight, which is the way I look at them. A sword saint is a fighter who whizzes, for lack of a better description. They literally are specialists in that one weapon. And again, two, because we're using two of the same. But that weapon of choice, the chosen weapon. And everything from there is just fiddly bits added on top, like their ability to buff the weapon, their ability to have spells that they can cast through the weapon. That leads us to our next point. Notice that at level 1 and level 2, you get these abilities called Spell Combat and Spellstrike. Spell Combat is the very first thing that a Magus is going to have access to. Not all Magus have these, by the way, but most of them do, and the Sword Saint certainly does. This one will give you the ability with this toggle running to cast a spell in combat. Doesn't matter what the spell is. It's an attack spell like Fireball. Is it a buff spell like Shield Spell? Is it a melee touch attack? Is it a ray spell? Doesn't matter. You cast the spell, and normally your turn would be over. For a wizard, certainly it would be. But for you, because you have Spell Combat, you can still do a full attack right after that with your weapon, so long as something's within range, of course. And you just chop, 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 or poke, 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 or bash, bash, bash your little heart out. Add a -2 penalty. That's cool. So that's an action economy. That's a better chance for you to do something in the combat that's of value. Cast a spell to hit somebody? Check. Swing a weapon at somebody that's right in front of you? Also check. You can see the appeal. Yes, it's a penalty, but again, there's going to be buffs that can take that penalty, or lessen that penalty for that matter. Notice at level 2, you get something called Spellstrike. This is the other ability that most Magus shoot for, and this is, again, why crit fishing is important. What happens here is you take, in this case, for a Sword Saint, a Magus, or an Eldritch Scion, they cast a spell like a touch attack, and there's several in the game for their spell books. So we have things like Touch of Fatigue, which is our infinite use cantrip. Doesn't do any damage, but it's still a touch attack. There's 2 spells at level 1 called Corrosive Touch and Shocking Grasp. There's a spell at level 2 called Frigid Touch, and at level 3 there's 2 spells, a new one, a Force Punch, I think is what it's called, and the old one, Vampiric Touch. And those are your melee touch attacks. the only melee touch attacks that you will be able to channel through your weapon. Yes, you heard that correctly. That's what Spellstrike does. You use, in conjunction with spell combat, the ability to cast a spell, your melee touch attack, into your weapon, and then you swing your weapon multiple times. And I mean multiple. At level 2, you can swing twice. Yes, that's at a -2 penalty thanks to spell combat, but you still get 2 swings. Again, action economy. Very huge here. But more than that, if the weapon hits, or when I should say the weapon hits, unless you've cast another spell after this, like a dummy, if you whiff, and just next turn you swing, and then you finally hit, the spell that you channeled into your weapon finally discharges. Okay? Until you either A, cast another spell, B, die, or C, hit with the weapon so that it discharges the spell, that spell is just sitting there. When the weapon hits, the spell discharges on said target. So that's why it's a single target melee touch attack. Having said that, it will discharge the spell and do whatever normal damage that spell will do. 1d6, 5d6, again, depends on the spell we're talking about. And of course the elemental damage in question. So again, like you have a frigid touch will do cold damage, the shocking grass is electrical, the corrosive touch is acid. There's no fire damage or sonic damage, sadly, but there's a vampiric touch, and that does like unholy damage, I want to say, or negative energy damage. The force punch one, the new spell, will do obviously force damage is the obvious explanation just based on the name of the spell. I haven't even tried it, but it should work. And the reason this is important is because normally melee touch attacks, again, a spell that you could have cast normally with just spell combat, you walk over, touch something on the shoulder, that's what a melee touch attack is, it's easier to do because touch attacks work off of this armor. You see this one here? See how my armor class over here is a solid 28, flat-footed is 16, my touch attack armor class is also 28, so again, these two numbers haven't changed. So you would say, who cares? Well, most people don't have a touch armor class equal to their main armor class here. This number is almost always better. So a touch attack, whether it's a race spell, a ranged touch attack, or a melee touch attack, is usually easier to land. Because again, I could touch you on the shoulder, on the armor, on the shield, it still discharges. That's why it's a touch attack. Having said that, why would you then not want to do that instead of swinging it through the weapon? Because now we have to rely on the weapon hitting, and the weapon has to hit this armor class, maybe flat-footed if you're lucky, because you caught them unawares, but by and large, it's usually the highest armor class that you're swinging at. Well, here's the thing. If the weapon hits, the spell hits. If the weapon crits, the spell crits. So, that's the fun. The reason we go crit fishing is we want a build that has a high crit potential, so you're more likely to crit, A, for extra damage, because who doesn't love that, and B, for when you finally get around to casting a spell through your weapon, it will also crit. Now, here's the downside of this. Notice that this multiplier here, we got a nice ×3 on our daggers when they finally crit. We roll basically this damage, this calculation you see over here, 3 separate times. That's all that means. It's not actually ×3. It just does 1d4 plus 12, then it does 1d4 plus 12, then it does 1d4 plus 12, again, adds all 3 of those numbers up, and that's the number for the damage that is dealt. That's why you will see numbers that are not divisible by 3. That's fine, I could give a rat's ass about that. But the problem is a lot of people just assume that, well, if that's ×3, then shouldn't my spell discharge at ×3? Sadly, it will not. All touch attacks, when they crit, just do double damage, which is still powerful. 5d6 damage on a single target of electric damage, jumping up to 10d6 is fucking huge, especially for a level 1 spell. So again, it's not that it's remotely bad, it's just not what you was hoping for. Hey, I know, I've been there before, but there is no way to make it ×3, ×4 that I know of anyway in this game. Having said that, your melee touch attacks and your ranged touch attacks, for that matter, always crit normally on a nat 20, just like any die roll would. You know, whether it's a club, a dagger, any weapon that you give me, literally a crossbow, bow, it literally will always crit, or has the potential, I should say, to crit on a 20. Same with melee touch attacks. Well, because you're channeling it through your weapon, you have a better chance of critting now, and therefore you have a better chance of the spell critting. You can see the appeal. So you got weapon damage and now spell damage, all the same combat round, and an extra attack in the process, no less. Yes, all of them are at a -2 to hit, but you can get around that. So this is the reason that people do Magus builds, is because of stuff like this. Notice at level 1 we are playing a generic tiefling. You can be male or female. I just went female for the picture. So Shaitan, you can do what you want. Pick the weapon that makes sense to you. Again, for a dex-based build, you still want something that's weapon finessable. So again, if rapier's your thing, you want to go one-handed, hey, do that thing. But you don't want to do something like a scimitar and go with the type of stats that I have. Scimitars are strength-based builds. It's a solid build. Plenty good Magus builds that I've done with scimitars. So again, have at thee. But you are a sword saint. Sword saints do not get to wear armor. They can, to be real clear on this, that candy defense ability even says in the tooltip, they have to be wearing light or no armor to get the benefit of this. They have to be wielding their chosen weapon. This is why you get screwed if you pick Kukri, because you can't find a Kukri for the longest time, which means you're not getting your candy defense bonus, which straight up kind of screws you. It's not horrible. It's only like a -1 to your armor class, -2, then -3. But it's really getting too annoying when you get to level 3 and you don't get your candy defense at all. So that's why I say pick a weapon that makes sense. Having said that, again, early beta, maybe they'll give us the stuff they stole from us in the first goddamn place and drop it in the pit. So that's just waiting for you at your goddamn feet when you get down there. That would be nice. Just saying, devs, feel free to do that thing. But at level 1, we went Tiefling, and the generic Tiefling at that. So because they get a +2 to Dex, a +2 to Intelligence, which is the 2 stats we give a rat's ass about, and a -2 to Charisma, which you'll see that I brought up to 10. Now, I have 11 in Strength. That's garbage, but I did it on purpose. Remember, Strength is one of the few stats that you can actually have end in an odd number and it still benefits you. The reason for this is its carrying capacity. That's all you really care about. A person with 11 strength will be able to actually physically carry more than a person with 10 strength. That's it. That's the only real reason here. The Dex started with a 17 and stayed at a 17. You see it's buffed right now because of spells and whatnot and ability from the belt that I'm wearing. But basically 17 is where we started, and there's a reason for that, because you wanted 2-weapon fighting and improved 2-weapon fighting, at least I did. And one of those requires a Dex of 15. The other one requires a Dex of 17. Now, we also have, unlike in my previous build for this type of build, greater 2-weapon fighting. Something that I would normally not do because this third last attack that you're seeing over here, that comes from greater 2-weapon fighting. And it's kind of lackluster. But I've got ways around that. There's plenty of spells that can buff us, and other feats and abilities that made it even better. So again, I'm not going to worry about that so much. Still important. Having said that, you needed a Dex of 19 to unlock that feat. Well, you can unlock that by getting something like a ring, a cloak, or in this case a belt, that increases your dexterity to 19 or higher. It has to be a permanent increase so long as you're wearing that gear. I have greater 2-weapon fighting. If I were to take that belt off, I would lose this attack. Okay, this last one here, because greater 2-weapon fighting would not be working. It's still there, it's just not working. Okay, so that's important, so know that. And you may say, well, this is cheesy because I'm right now in the tutorial level. There's no way I'd have a level 20 character, certainly not a level 10 angel, and I certainly wouldn't have Belt of Incredible Dexterity +4 to get the feats that I need, this greater 2-weapon fighting. Yes, that's true. However, I wanted to show you this by doing it this way because I know that this exists in the game. I have found the belt. It's not too far into it, and chances are, since this is a dex-based build, this would be the person you would give that belt to, or something similar. Doesn't have to be this belt, but anything that gives you at least +2 to dexterity permanently while wearing it. That's something you're going to want. Now, what do we get at level 1? We pick our weapon of choice. In case you were paying attention, I went dagger. You can pick whatever you want. Weapon finesse, because we're dex-based build, so again, light weapon. Elven curved blade, even though that's a 2-hander, that's weird, but again, can weapon finesse it. S-stock, bad idea in my opinion, even though if you go on the forums, people swear by the S-stock because it does more damage. It does 2d4 of damage per hit with just a generic S-stock. Yeah, that's cool, but you can't really rely on the game giving you a lot of good S-stocks. So, there is one good magical weapon out there. We'll talk about that later. But by and large, I'd shy away from that. Rapier, on the other hand, is a solid choice. It's just not a light weapon. So again, it's still weapon finessable. Since I'm going 2-weapon wielding, I wanted light weapons that I could mirror. So kukri, short sword, dagger is what I went with. And again, it's an okay crit range. Even 17 to 20 with my improved critical on daggers. That's still decent. It's just not as nice as the kukris would have been, because the kukris would have went all the way down to a 15. So 15 to 20 is their crit range when you have the keen version or the improved critical version, which of course we can do. But I digress. We go from there, we grab weapon finesse at level 1. Remember, you're not human, so you only get 1 feat pick. Weapon finesse is necessary so that you can at least hit with your weapon. Notice that your strength is such crap, you're not doing any damage with the weapon. You see the +12 that you're seeing here? That's coming from all my buffs and stuff that I have on my character, so ignore that. You'll be swinging for a dagger of 1d4, and you're only going to have 1 probably for the longest time. So you're going to do crap damage. Yes, you can buff it. With Arcane Pool, you can make it a +1 weapon. and therefore it'll be a +1 to your swing and a +1 to your damage. So it'll be 1d4 +1, but only for a minute at a time. You can click that multiple times in a day though, so you should really use those. You probably only get like 4 or something at the very beginning, but it'll get better over time. So I wouldn't worry about that right now. Know that that weapon finesse though is going to help you connect, because your attack bonus again is driven off of usually strength for melee. By having the weapon finesse, our dexterity of 17 will mean we have a +3 over here. So it'll be a +3 to your swing at level 1. It's not amazing. That's why this is going to be difficult on anything other than core difficulty, in my opinion. But it gets better. Because you have a chosen weapon, your weapon focus, they give you right off the bat. So your chosen weapon, they give you weapon focus for free. That's built into the character. So again, that 3 now jumps up to a 4. And again, is that amazing? Also, no. You make it a 5 by adding that. Again, that's helpful. Still not amazing. But again, it's better than nothing and better than some of your main characters that are joining in here. And there's ways to push that just the tiniest bit higher here and there. Having said that, at level 2, nothing really to write home about. Know that our spell book is like a wizard's in that you can scribe scrolls to it. So once you find a scroll, check to see if you can scribe it to her spell book. Do it for every spell, is my advice to you. So you have every spell in the game. For Sword Saint anyway, that's level 1 through 6. That's not all the wizard spells level 1 through 6, but it's a good smattering of spells. You won't have enchantments, you won't have the summoning spells, very few illusion spells at that. So again, it's not going to be amazing, but the spells that you really kind of care about will be mostly buffs for yourself, some crowd control here and there, and the melee touch attack spells that we already talked about, stuff like that. And again, an occasional ray spell. Sometimes targets like to run. Magic Missile is still valid. So again, you will pick and choose your spells as needed. So I'm not going to dwell on the spells per se, at least as far as the Sword Saints are concerned. At level 3, notice that we're picking up Arcane Strike. The order of these is a little bit flexible, so we should start by talking about that. I'm grabbing this one first, though, because this is a staple. It's a +1 to your damage for any weapon you're wielding. It doesn't have to be daggers, but again, you leave this toggle running and it's a +1. Eventually it migrates up to a +5 by level 20. So this is a solid upgrade. This will get you literally a solid +5 damage on both weapons. And it's just free. There's no penalty there. It's just a bonus to damage. That's all it does. It is commonly shutting off. It takes a swift action, which means if any other swift action is done in that combat round, it will shut this off. So if your damage doesn't look like it's as strong as it could be, check this. That's why I leave it in my toolbar down below. Okay, but that's an amazing upgrade, and again, all plus, no minus. Notice at level 3 we also get our first Magus Arcana. That's these guys here that are in the square boxes, not the circle. We'll talk about that later. There's a variety of things that you can pick here. Again, I have no right answer for you here, buddy. But I do like the Arcane Accuracy for a specific reason. One, it's based on your casting stat modifier, in this case, Intelligence. So if I'm going all in on my Intelligence, which I am, because it started with a 19 here, and put 5 points in it by the end of the build, as you can see, we're finishing with a solid buff. And then you throw on more gear, because you better believe I'm going to get Intelligence gear for her as well. A hat of some kind that makes her Intelligence go higher, higher, higher. This number goes higher, higher, higher as well, which means anytime I use this for that combat round, I have this massive insight bonus based on my Intelligence modifier for all my melee attacks. Well, actually for every attack for that matter. So if I were to try to shoot you with like a ray spell, for example, I could buff up with this first and then shoot the ray spell and get a massive-ish buff to the chance of hitting. That's pretty good. And this is one of the few buffs that you have that are down here in these Magus Arcana that is dependent on your caster stat. I'll give you an example of one that's not, that's still awesome. Prescient Attack. There's another one that's similar to this called Dimensional Strike. Again, it's a one and done. You use it, and for one round, you're awesome. And that's it. But, what do? Well, Prescient Attack makes the target flat-footed. Like, by definition, it just does it. It literally takes away their dex bonus and straight up screws them from one round. So if you're meleeing somebody, look at how easy it is to hit this target versus that target, or this target. You see that? So then 28 versus 16, certainly you'd rather swing at the 16, right? That's what Prescient Attack will do for you. But that's dependent on them having a really good dex modifier, really good dodge armor, which is, again, stuff that will that gives them touch armor and regular armor. And again, the only thing that would be left behind is, do they have armor? Do they have a shield? Do they have deflection bonuses? Things of that nature. So this number is almost always the worst category, if not always. It's so close that it should be. If it's not the worst, it's tied with the touch armor class. So this is usually the easiest thing for you to hit. So this, again, is a godsend. You notice that I'm grabbing it at the very end because it wasn't available here. For one, it's available here, and again, I wanted something else. But again, this one is dependent then on the target. Does the target have a lot of dodge, a lot of dex? If they're like a knight in full plate armor, this ain't going to do you shit because they don't have a whole lot of dodge over here. So this number's not really high. This, on the other hand, will be good because they have full plate mail. They'll have like a tower shield. They'll have a ring of deflection or something similar. And they'll be buffed to the fucking nines. So deflection, or sorry, prescient attack isn't going to do you a whole lot of good. But that's when you use the other one that we don't have here, that I could have grabbed, called Dimension Strike. It takes 2 points of your pool points, instead of these ones which take 1 each. Again, for 1 round of buff, your attacks for the entire round ignore armor. They ignore the armor bonus, the shield bonus that the target may have. It basically turns it into a touch attack, which again is one of the lighter categories of likely to hit. So again, if you're fighting a knight, use Dimension Strike. If you're using fighting against rogue ninja bastards that have like a high touch attack bonus here, high dex bonus and armor or dodge besides, prescient attack their ass and then fucking chop them down in the flat-footed category and just chop, chop, chop. But if you don't know, that's why we like arcane accuracy, because again, it's not dependent on them, it's dependent on me. How high is my casting stat, which again is pretty fucking high. So that's why I like arcane accuracy. There's other stuff that we can grab in here. You extend spells like 3 times a day. There's a lot of cool shit to have in here. Again, I can't tell you the right answer. You may change your mind depending on that. Having a shield spell that lasts at level 3 instead of for 3 minutes, having it last for 6 minutes, that could be like half the goddamn dungeon. And you don't have very many castings of that spell. So extend magic, which you could grab here, is viable. But everybody's different on that. I'd rather hit my target than worry about me having better armor for longer periods of time. From there, at level 4, notice we get Perfect Strike. Now, there's some stuff in here that I'm not going to talk a lot about, but just to point out some stuff that some of these are toggles, and these toggles suck sometimes. For example, the ability to use up your arcane pool points, which are very precious, and what happens is when you roll an attack, if you hit the target, your weapon does full damage if you have Perfect Strike on. What does that mean? Full damage is that 1d4 means it's guaranteed to be a 4. Woo. Who gives a shit? I could still roll it and still get the 4. I could roll it and get a 3 and still not be like, ooh, I'm screwed. No, it's lame. This is stupid. These are for people that are like, oh, I have the best weapon, like the S stock, again, that does 2d4 of damage. That's a minimum of 2, a maximum of 8. All right, if you use this every time you hit, you're guaranteed that 8, and of course all the buff behind it, that plus 12 is still going in there, so that could be a solid 20 hit. Okay, I guess, sure, that's something, but you've just chewed up those pool points very quickly, because every time you hit, it's going to chew another one up to do full damage. Full damage. Is it really worth it? Again, I can't answer that for you. I know I don't think so. There's another one you get, by the way, another toggle, and what it does is when you crit, increases the multiplier, I want to say, from times 2 to times 3, times 3 to times 4. And that one I could see being a little more useful, because again, it only works when it crits. So again, obviously it's not going to happen a lot, so you're not chewing through those points a ton. But when it does crit, hey, seeing that thing do 4 times the damage, 3 times the damage, that's some significant numbers you're putting up on the board there. I could see that one. The one that just does full weapon damage. Having said that, though, if you leave both toggles on, yes, they will chew up those arcane pool points like no one's business. But if you hit and crit at the same time, obviously, and you got that Perfect Strike on and the one that increases the multiplier, you did full weapon damage, which again is guaranteed to be maximum, and then you critted with that, which again multiplied by 3, for example, could be a significant amount of damage. So I can't say that it's garbage. It's just not for me. Having said that, those are free. You get them, shut them off when they show up. Notice we have a Piranha Strike here. Now this is just like Arcane Strike in that it's a buff to your damage. However, this is also a penalty to your swing. But by now I think you can handle it. You're a level 5 Sword Saint. What does that mean? It means you have a BAB of 0, 1, 2, 3, then it resets. It's back at plus 3 again here. Add your Dexterity modifier, which is only going to be a plus 3 probably by this point. So again, 3 and 3 would be 6. You have Weapon Focus, you have a plus 7 then to your swing. Maybe you got a magic weapon, or you buffed it to be a magic weapon, so you got a plus 8 to your swing. With this thing on, you're at a penalty now of -1, -2, somewhere in there. Yeah, you could suck that up, and again, it gives you, for every point you're seeing over here, it's not on right now, every point of penalty to your attack bonus gives you 2 points of damage. That's not bad. So the end of the build would be a -4 typically for both sets of weapons, both sides, and both sets of weapons then will get a +8 to their damage on this side. So this 12 and this 12 will actually go up to a 20 and a 20. You can see the appeal. It's a solid upgrade. Having said that, there are problems with this not getting the full bonus. Ways around that are coming, like double slice. Talk about that later. But that's level 5. Notice we got Piranha Strike. Notice we also at the same level we get one of 3 Magus feats. We're going to grab Blind Fight down here. Again, it's not the only one you could grab, but this is the one I decided I wanted. Blind Fight is extremely valuable. If you don't grab Improved Blind Fight, which I do, if you don't though, at least get this one by the end of the build. You'd be surprised how this last little statement here, you also gain immunity to gaze attacks, will save your ass. Does it in Kingmaker? I can't imagine it won't be the same here. Hell, you're fighting demons. They're notorious for fucking petrification and all kinds of weird gaze abilities. So you gotta figure immunity to gaze attacks is a solid upgrade for your character. The real reason you want this is this part right here, where you don't lose your dexterity in melee while fighting an invisible opponent. That means you're flat-footed. If they're invisible, you can't see them, you don't know where the fuck the attack's coming, you're at this lower armor class. Look how low that is. You're gonna get hit a lot. Well, with this, if it's melee, I know roughly where they're at and know when they're basically going to swing, which means I'm going back to my armor here or to my touch armor there, but definitely not this lame flat-footed category. It's not to say that I can't be caught flat-footed, but it's less likely. The other reason you want it is because of this little statement right up here. Any concealment, which is either a 20% chance to miss a target or 50% chance, which is total concealment, by the way, to miss a target. Some like displacement will give you 50% and blur will give you 20%. These are examples. Any of those, what happens if you roll your attack before you even decide if you can hit? They roll a 1d100 to see if you can see and hit the concealed target. So a 20% miss chance means if on a 1d100 you roll a 20 or less, you miss. Doesn't matter how strong your character is, how naked in the breeze those motherfuckers are, you miss them. And if it's, of course, total concealment, it's a 50% chance. That's a 50-50 chance of just straight up missing. Again, doesn't matter how good or how bad your swing is. Now, what happens with this feat, the game will re-roll it twice. What happens is it rolls it once. If you fail, be key on this. If you fail, it re-rolls it again and takes the second roll. Now, that doesn't mean you pass. It just means it's going to roll again. So it's for people that play D&D, it's advantage, if that helps you understand. So you literally get advantage on that attack. So you roll twice, but only as far as the concealment chance. From there, you roll your weapon attack like normal. Your attack bonus against their armor. Do you hit? Again, you can still whiff that way. But this is extremely valuable. It makes a lot of fights that are like, I'm whiffing. What the actual hell? And you didn't have a way to penetrate their concealment. In Kingmaker, an example of this fight that would annoy you to no end would be you had fought the phase spiders. The phase spiders notoriously have either blur or displacement on. And that's a 20% or 50% chance just to straight up miss those little bastards. And there's a lot of phase spiders in Kingmaker in a specific area. So again, if you had blind fight, that fight became extremely trivialized. Still whiffing, still problems, but compared to what you had to deal with, if you didn't have blind fight, it's leaps and bounds better. Having said that, that's level 5. Level 6, again, we were having Enduring Blades. This is your Magus Arcana. Again, variety of stuff you could have grabbed here. You could have grabbed Prescient Attack here. I like this one because this is a toggle that when we're buffing our weapon, making it +1, +2, eventually up to +5, setting it on fire, making it a Bane weapon, making it a Ghost Touch or Brilliant Energy weapon or whatever I choose to do to it, I can have it last instead for 1 minute every time I click it. If I click it with this toggle running, it eats up more points, but it now lasts for 1 minute per Sword Saint level. So by the end of your build, you can buff your weapon for 20 minutes at a time. That's pretty fucking powerful. So I kind of dig that one. And you don't have to. And a lot of people say that in my previous videos that this is wasteful. Because again, you get a lot of those arcane pool points. But yeah, again, they only work for 1 minute increments. And then for when it's arcane accuracy or prescient attack or dimensional strike, for example, they're 1 round increments. So you chew up a point just to hit once or for 1 combat round to be a badass. Sometimes that's all you need to finish off that fight. But again, I'd rather have a solid buffed weapon for upwards of 20 minutes at a time. And again, it doesn't cost me that much. So I have multiple times in the day where I can just buff my weapon and go to town. It's always the main weapon, by the way. So since we're 2 weapon wielding, this is a weird statement to say, of the daggers you have here, you should probably put the best dagger in your offhand once you get all the way to greater two-weapon fighting, where you have 1, 2, 3 attacks. Again, it's not necessarily the best way of doing things, but this means I don't have to worry about buffing it that much, because this will be the weapon that I buff, and it can be the subpar one, because I can make it great. Again, your mileage may vary. Feel free to do as you wish, but that's usually how I do that. Notice at level 7, we finally unlock two-weapon fighting. Now this, again, doesn't happen to be here, but I'm grabbing it at this point because, again, while it's a -2 penalty and a -2 penalty, and penalties thanks to Piranha Strike as well, I think you can handle it by this point. So again, you have a battle of 0, 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5. You're at a 5 to your BAB for your attack here and here, because again, you're two-weapon fighting now. You had a -2 to each of those because you're two-weapon fighting with light weapons, and it says that here in the tooltip. See, the massive penalty is normally -6 to your main hand and -10 to your offhand. It drops it down to -4 and -4. The penalties become even less if it's a light weapon. And unarmed strikes are considered light weapons too, which weirdly, having a weapon here and having a fist, they won't let you do an unarmed strike with a fist and a weapon. I don't know why, but it's what it is. If you do in fists, you have to do fists in one hand only. Having said that, this is why we like to have the penalty being for a light weapon be a -2 and a -2. Yeah, it sucks, and yeah, with Piranha Strike it also sucks. But again, just because you have two-weapon fighting picked doesn't mean you have to do it. You should literally go around, if you can, with one dagger in your hand and crush some shit, because you cannot do this cool stuff of casting spells into your weapon and swing, swing, swing if you have daggers in both hands, because it's blocking your ability to cast. You can still cast, at least they don't fuck you that way, but you don't get the multiple attacks that you should normally get. So that's a problem. So there's reasons for you to go back, if you will, pinch hit back off to just a one-handed attack with, again, just in this case, a dagger in one hand and nothing in the offhand. You'll appreciate it, your swing will be better, your damage output won't be as much because you're getting less attacks, but that's, again, something you have to decide on your own in each individual fight. Notice that we get something else that's incredibly impressive for a sword saint. It's one of the reasons why we consider them a fighter who whizzes. All, or at least most, magi get fighter training. They get theirs at 10, the other ones, and the way it works for them is considered their Magus level, whatever that may be, divided by 2. So at level 10, they're a level 5 fighter. By level 20, they're a level 10 fighter. You get the idea. Why does that matter? Because there's feats that are required that you're fighter level 4, 6, 8, 12, 20, whatever. And again, they'll only get up to 10, and they won't even be able to use that one, more likely than not, because there's no feat for them to pick here at level 20. There's a way around it, but more or less, that's still a true statement. For us, though, sword saints get fighter training at level 7, and unlike them, instead of it being half their sword saint levels, it's their sword saint level -3. So at level 7, they're considered a level 4 fighter. That already opens up some stuff. Then again, by the time they're at level 19, they're a level 16 fighter. Here's an example of a fighter feat that you want, and that only a sword saint can realistically get, because no other Magus is getting to level 16 fighter. They're getting to level 10, best case scenario, if they're a purist build. So again, this is awesome. This gives us a lot of shit that we get to do for being a fighter. That's why, again, I feel like they're a fighter who whizzes. Notice they also get a bonus to their initiative. I have the best words. That's normally your dex modifier and any bonuses you may have to initiative. And of course, you roll a 1d20 like everybody else. You add that up, and that's the turn order for who goes first, who goes second, so on and so forth. Now we can actually add our intelligence modifier to that. And this is another reason why people will say, well, then maybe you should just have gone all in on dex and only have a low intelligence, because again, up until this point, you would have been using that really high dex to A, swing, B, get armor, C, you would have had better reflexes, D, you would have had a better initiative roll. Those are all true statements. And again, a little bit of intelligence would have still added to your initiative here, would have given you spells. 16 intelligence would have been more than enough to cast all your spells level 1 through 6. You just don't get a lot of spells. And while that's less of a concern now, because there's ways for you to get a shit ton of spells, it's still important to me that I have a high intelligence. Mostly because of things like arcane accuracy, where it's dependent on my high intelligence, or the more spells I have a day, or in this case also, the more skills I have as far as skill points to distribute. If you're going to take this character solo, even at all, you're going to want to have skills that are covering a broad range of shit. This character has it, and it's because of that high intelligence stat. From there, know that we have level 8. We get improved spell combat. This is nothing more than concentration bonus for when you're casting spells in melee. People will try to poke you in the face. If they damage you, you literally will have to do a concentration check to hold the spell. If you fail it, you will waste the spell and waste your turn, more likely than not. So be careful. High fortitude solves that problem. Or sorry, high con stat solves that problem. Improved spell combat helps. So it's greater spell combat. So does something called combat casting, which is a feat we did not take, but it would stack with these buffs, and you could do so. I just chose not to. This is good enough for me, and again, you're going to be damn near untouchable is the goal anyway, so the chances they will hit you is pretty slim. Still don't like to encourage it, but the point's still the same. I think we can make do with what we have. Level 9, you're going to get improved critical dagger. Again, this is not necessary. We have, when we upgrade our weapon, at 5th level here, 5th level, once you get to a +2, we can turn it into a flaming weapon or a frost weapon or a keen weapon. That's the same thing as improved critical. The downside of that is it only works again on the main weapon, not the offhand. So there's that. The other is this is always on, so I don't have to waste a point making it a keen weapon, or I don't have to look for keen daggers. If I get them up until that point, hey, great. But once you have this, it's less of a concern. And everyone argues on this one again. It's not necessary. You can make it keen with that buff, but yeah, you can't do it with the offhand. Well, then just put the keen dagger in the offhand. Yeah, but those keen daggers are usually like a +1 keen dagger, and they kind of suck. I'd rather have the +4, death touch dagger, where the fuck they got in the game, in the offhand. And if it's not keen by default, I will still want that high crit range. This is how I do that. Okay, so it's always on, and you're always going to use daggers because, again, you're a sword saint, or in this case a dagger saint, and that's what you're going to do. So whatever weapon you choose, this is the improved critical you want. Notice that we get another bonus here. This is your critical perfection. We add our intelligence bonus, again, on critical hit confirmation rolls with our chosen weapon. Now that's money. So that, again, much like dexterity, because again the dexterity would still be added in there, you may say that just make more dexterity, because again a little bit of intelligence added to a very high dexterity stat would still have done the same thing. Yes, true. I'm getting my shit back is what I'm basically telling you here. And again, so I'm not really suffering by having this high intelligence and subpar dex. But notice this next part. The sword saint may use his Magus levels, or sword saint levels, in place of his base attack bonus, but only for purposes of qualifying for a feat that requires a high BAB, which we do have. I can't remember which one it is, but some of these require a BAB of like 9, a BAB of like 10, a BAB of 12, and again, you're not going to get that for a while. So the fact that you'll have access to stuff, I think improved critical might be one of those things, is pretty fucking badass. And again, that is something that's unique to the sword saint as far as compared to the other magi. And again, now you're up to a +3 weapon, possibly. We'll talk about that later. Notice that we also will be getting at this stage, doesn't say it in here, but we get like a speed buff. So it could be a speed weapon at this point. And here it becomes the fire or electric or shock, your choice, or keen. Again, your choice. You can have one or more. Over here, you get the speed buff. And the reason that it's over here is because the speed buff takes 3 points. Well, again, we'll talk about that so you understand how that works. But no, when I talk about points, I mean pluses. So a +1 weapon, a +2, +3, all the way up to a +5. If you want that +5, you can do that, but you're not going to make it a speed weapon then. You're not going to make it a weapon that's on fire then, because again, you're going to take away from those pluses. But again, there's ways around that, and there's ways to make it better than you think. So don't worry about it too much. Notice at level 10, nothing really to write home about, but you're doing well. Level 11, we got double slice. Now this is another one that, again, people are like, why are you grabbing this? Well, A, the tooltip is misleading. It talks about strength, we're a dex-based build, but we will have, by this point, I know it doesn't look like it, we will have the ability to use this dex modifier for our damage. Normally it's called fencing grace or slashing grace, just depends on the type of weapon you have. In our case, since it's a piercing weapon, which is what that little arrow indicates here, the daggers would be fencing grace. A short sword is, I think, the same thing. Slashing grace, kukris, I think, fall in that category. Doesn't matter. The feat will be obvious, and you can only pick it for the weapon of choice. So that's the weapon you want. You get fencing grace for this one, you get slashing grace for the other one. But what those do is they take the dex modifier, assuming your weapon finessing, which of course you would be if you wanted fencing or slashing grace, you'd use that dex modifier for your damage as well. It's pretty awesome. And you may say, well, then why grab double slice? It works with strength. Well, it works for dex as well. So whichever makes sense, basically. And the way this works is, until you get double slice. Look at that big +5. You'd be getting +5 here. You'd only get +2 over here. Why? You only get half rounded down of the modifier, whether it's strength or dex, whichever you're using. And again, in this case, that +5 dropping to a 2.5, rounded down to a 2, you're losing out on 3 points of damage per hit, but only from this weapon. And you may say, well, it's only 3 points times 3, so it's only 9 damage wasted. Yeah, I can deal with that. Okay, fine, then don't grab this, grab something else. But I like that, and I know we're going to put that dex higher, higher, higher. That +5 is a holding point. I guarantee I'm going to get this up to at least a +7, if not more. And again, rounded down, 7 divided by 2, that's a 3.5. That's 3 damage instead of 7 damage. Now you're missing out on 4, 4, and 4 damage. Can you stomach that? Maybe. But missing out on 12 damage a combat round to one target that you're trying to fucking down, that hurts, man. That hurts a lot. And double slice solves that problem. Now the thing with double slice is you need to pair it with something else. Double slice needs to be paired with things like fencing grace or slashing grace, as I mentioned. So you're using that dexterity, of course. Or you need to be a strength-based build, and then double slice works. Because again, it would be all your strength buff would be over here, and a minimal strength buff half rounded down would be over here, unless you had double slice. Or if you're still a dex-based build, there is another way around it. It's called finesse training, which the Eldritch Scoundrels have access to, for example. And what they do is they basically give them the equivalent of what's called agile weapons. There are agile daggers that exist in the game. So again, if you find an agile dagger and an agile dagger, again, they would work beautifully. They would give you that dex modifier here and here for damage with double slice, so it works beautifully. But they're rare. And again, there's a way for you to get the equivalent of agile daggers on this build. I'll show you that at the end. But double slice is important. Notice we're also getting superior reflexes. I'll make a number of attacks of opportunity around equal to our intelligence modifier. Again, another intelligence modifier deal. Minimum of 1. This effect stacks with combat reflexes feat, which you don't have to take, which we did not take. But that'd be another way for you to get like your dex and your intelligence to give you a retarded amount of attacks of opportunity. Now the downside of that is I can't even imagine using up to 7, let alone 7 and 5, or 7 and 7, or 7, whatever numbers I end up with. So that's silly. So I'm okay with just taking the default 7 from here, or whatever else I get with it when I pump my intelligence higher, higher, higher. I'm still not going to even use all those 7 in a combat round. Again, that's just automatic. A bad guy flees from you, for example, like you're here, he's right here, he runs away from you out of the range of your weapon, and you will do an attack of opportunity on the motherfucker. Well, yeah, maybe his friend does the same thing, so that's another, that's 2. You're going to have 7 bad guys surrounding you that are all fleeing at the same time? It's probably unlikely. So again, 7's good enough. This is why I don't really care about going higher. Notice we also get another Magus feat. By the way, I should point out that the Magus feats here at levels 5, 11, and 17 are awesome, but they're limited feat picks. They are limited to fighting feats, so things that are like martial weapon proficiencies and weapon focus and things of that nature, or magic feats, so like meta magic, spell penetration, things of spell focus, things of this nature. So not all the feats are included in these, just to be clear. So when these levels come up at level 5 in Kingmaker, I would grab this one first and then that one. Sadly, you can't do that in this game anymore. They've taken away that as a possibility. You have to take this one, and then you have to take that one. So the point is kind of know that this next one's coming. So if this one, for example, could be picked here and here, and the one that you wanted to grab here is not available, but would have been available here, then grab it up at the early one, and then grab the less inclusive one down here, like Piranha Strike or whatever. For this build, I put it right where it needs to be, so it's fine. So if you follow the build, you're going to be okay. But there's some other weird feats. For example, like if you want to get, say, skill focus can be grabbed up in here. You can't grab skill focuses down here, for example. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. So notice we've grabbed also improved 2-weapon fighting at this point, again, with our double slice. Now we're up to 2 attacks on our offhand. A full attack, and then another attack at -5. So again, solid swing. So we're up to probably 2 and 2 or 3 and 2 attacks in a combat round at this point. And by this point, I'd say you probably want to most times wield double daggers. Level 12, we're going to grab ourselves Ghost Blade. Again, there's a variety of things you could have picked. This one's amazing. We have 2 for the price of 1. Ghost Touch. We could turn our weapon into a Ghost Touch weapon, and remember, it's our main weapon. This allows us to ignore things like incorporeal targets that are resistant to our damage. If it's a Ghost Touch weapon, like the one we're making now, then it will cut right through them like butter. Brilliant Energy, you can't even use it yet. You have to wait till you get this high or higher, because it actually takes a +4 to activate it, which means you're taking your +4 buff here and getting no buff as far as a bonus to your weapon. You're getting the Brilliant Energy buff to your weapon instead. If you do that, though, what does it do? Well, Brilliant Energy is one of my favorites. Bane Blade's still my favorite, but Brilliant Energy is a close second. It literally allows your main weapon that you buff with it to hit as if it's a touch attack. So basically ignores armor, ignores shields. It's, again, a Brilliant Energy. That's what a Brilliant Energy weapon does. And there's Brilliant Energy daggers, for example, in the game. So you don't need to buff those, obviously, but you could put that in your offhand and then make this one a Brilliant Energy, and you just choppity. But there's got to be a catch, brother, because that's just way too OP. Sure as shit there is. Brilliant Energy weapons do not work on constructs, they do not work on objects, and they do not work on undead. So since we have definitely undead in this game, and I'm guessing probably at least some constructs, this is crap for those fights. Do not buff with that. But your main offhand weapon will not have that buff, probably. And as long as it's not a Brilliant Energy dagger, that one's still going to be fine. So this one will be with no damage. Even if it hits them, it'll do no damage. This one here will hit and do full damage. So at the very least, if you forget or fuck it up, you're probably not screwing yourself. But this one, when it can be used, is fucking amazing. So that's a nice one. Level 13, you're going to grab yourself Greater 2-weapon fighting. Again, this is a deviation from my last dual Kukri Sword Saint build. You actually are pushing this. But again, to get this, you need to have a dex of 19 or higher. Again, we have it because of the belt. So by then, you better have a belt or something that's pushing that dex up to a 19. And spells aren't good enough. So don't think, I'll just cast Grace on myself and pick this feat. It doesn't work. It has to be a piece of gear or an actual increase to your dexterity from natural means, which we're not going to do. So again, get that belt, keep the belt on her. Again, if I take the belt off, you'll see that this attack drops off. Put the belt back on or something similar that gives me 19 dexterity or higher, I'll have that attack back like normal. So it doesn't disappear forever, thank God. But it is annoying. So just be aware of that shit. Because if you like swap out gear, you're like, I should be kicking ass. Why am I missing an attack? Oh, my dexterity dropped. Son of a bee. And this would also be applicable if they probably sap your dexterity with like a spell or an attack of some kind that lowers your dexterity, or poison or disease. You get that dexterity back to under 19 or 17 or 15, and I'm not going to get my Greater 2-weapon fighting, Improved 2-weapon fighting, or 2-weapon fighting to work. I'll go back to having just one weapon. Or I'll have two weapons, and this one will be swinging with a massive penalty, like a -8 and a -8. Like, fuck that. So be careful of your dexterity going down. From there, notice we're also getting cool stuff for free, like Lethal Focus. When the Sword Saint is attacking a flat-footed opponent, we'll get our Intelligence modifier added to the damage. Now that's money. And you may say, again, if it was Dexterity, it would have already have been there, because you have Agile weapons, or you have Fencing Grace, or Slashing Grace, or some other way of getting that Dexterity modifier added to your damage. Yes, I know, but again, the point is I'm getting it back. Not all the time, when they're flat-footed, but remember, Prescient Attack makes them flat-footed, definitely. So this is a good way to surge your damage. Again, Prescient Attack and chop, chop, chop. Notice that we also have, again, Arcane Weapon +4 now. Level 14, we're getting our Greater Spell Combat for free. Again, a much better chance that we won't fail our spells when we're in combat. Again, less of a concern since you're probably pre-buffing up, but still an issue. Penetrating Strikes. Now at level 15, this means you're a fighter level 12. Remember, 15 -3. This is the soonest you can pick this up, because you have to be fighter level 12 to pick up this feat. This one ignores damage reduction of the target by 5. Now that's physical damage reduction. So the DR 5, DR 10, DR 20, whatever they have in this game. Demons have a lot of that shit. And some of them have DR, a number, so we'll just say N, DRN / and then they'll have something behind the /. Cold Iron. Again, Cold Iron weapons penetrate that, which means the DR doesn't exist. Cold Iron could be a choice. It could be silver, alchemical silver weapons like Lycanthrope. It could be adamantine. So again, if you had an adamantine dagger, that would ignore that damage. Whatever's behind the / is what penetrates it. But there's some that have DR, a number, so DRN /. That means nothing penetrates it, supposedly. This penetrates it. Doesn't matter what it is, it ignores up to 5 points of damage reduction. So those bastards that have a DR of like 20 and you're like chopping and you're doing like minimal damage, because I don't have my buffs on right now, but I'll probably be in the 20s. You're doing like 1 or 2 points of damage, whereas a moment ago you were just like chopping shit in half. Like, where the fuck all my damage go? A DR 20 fucking monster. This drops it down to a DR 15 technically, and it's not amazing, but it's better than it was a moment ago. Trust me when I say this helps a lot. And if this helps a lot, its Big Brother version is fucking money, which is why we grabbed that one here. But back to level 15. Not only do we grab that, now we're just getting Baneblade. Again, not our only Magus Arcana choice. We got plenty still to choose from. This is still a solid upgrade, and I would be remiss if I did not give you the best upgrade to your weapon. You know, Prescient Attack is amazing. Arcane Accuracy, Dimension Strike, all that shit, you know, Ghost Blade and all that fucking stuff, Enduring Blade, are all amazing. If you had one thing to pick from this entire list, and you only had one thing you could choose, pick Baneblade. And here's why. Baneblade takes a point to activate it, a plus. It also takes pool points to activate it, much like Enduring Blades does. So it costs more, but for what it gives you, it's totally fucking worth it. Baneblade turns the weapon in your main hand into a Bane weapon. What does that mean? It means it's already a +2 to that bad guy. And it's a +2 to the damage. And then it's a Bane weapon, and therefore does 2d6 of force damage on top of that. So it does a +2 to the swing, and it does a +2d6 to the damage. So that's a 4 to a 14 damage bump against every target, because it's a Bane weapon against every target. Now the trick on that is this. Most Bane weapons, because they're Bane weapons that exist in the game, are Undead Bane, Demon Bane, Vermin Bane, something like that, where it literally gives a name. So the Bane only works against that type. I mean, there's ones that are like Living Bane, so anything that's living would literally be at a penalty. A +2 to the swing, +2 to the damage, 2d6 extra damage on top of that. This is a Bane weapon universal. It means it is a Bane weapon to anything you're fighting. Demon, it's a Bane weapon. Devil, Bane. Human, Bane. Elf, Bane. Don't give a fuck. It's a Bane weapon. This thing's amazing. This is one of the few ways that you can take the +5 weapon and make it better than +5. Because, like I said, it adds 2 to it. So it's technically could be all the way up to a +7-ish weapon with just Baneblade added to it. That's fucking amazing. So that's worth. So that's the why you grab that. And again, that's grabbed as soon as we can get it. Notice at level 16, we're getting Counter-Strike. Again, another cool ability for being a Sword Saint. Enemy within reach of our weapons, which they don't reach very far. Someone's trying to cast a spell defensively. That enemy provokes an attack of opportunity from the Magus after the spell is complete. So again, if they try to be a spellcaster, you run up on their fucking ass. Cleric, wizard, druid, doesn't fucking matter. They try to cast spells defensively near you. As soon as they get done cast a spell, poke to the face. Attack of opportunity. And again, that's added to your, not added, it's part of your attacks of opportunity to get here. Remember, superior reflexes, but remember, we got plenty. So that's really, really nice. So run into the thick of them fucking caster types and have at thee. You'll enjoy that. Level 17, weapon specialization dagger. This one's not necessary. I take it because we did it on the other build. There's nothing else I really wanted to have here. I mean, I grabbed Improved Blind Fight down here. I suppose I could have grabbed Improved Blind Fight, and then I could have grabbed Greater Blind Fight. That could have been a thing. That's on you. But I like this one because, again, we know we're always going to use daggers, and it's just a generic +2 to your damage for every attack with any dagger you have. Remember, it has to be a dagger, not a punching dagger. There's differences. So just a generic dagger. Any generic dagger is another +2 to damage, another +2 to damage. So again, you appreciate it. So again, what the hell? And again, you'll notice I did not grab Greater Weapon Specialization Dagger. You could have. Again, I could have gotten rid of this and got Greater Weapon Specialization Dagger. That'd be another +2 to all our dagger attacks. That'd be up to a +4. +5 thanks to Arcane Strike, so that we're at a +9 to our dagger swing. And then with Piranha Strike on, it's a -4 to your swing and a +8 to your damage for all your dagger strikes. So again, a 5 and an 8 and a 4, that's a lot of fucking damage right there, bro. And that's not even counting it being a magic weapon. Bane weapon, getting all those other buffs that we could have added to the weapon. That's a solid amount of fuck you to a bad guy. But one's good enough for me. I didn't feel like grabbing the other. And with Arcane Strike, I mean, really, that +5, that's nice. Over here at 18, notice that we got Prescient Attack. Way late, like I said, that could have been grabbed way the hell back here, or any time thereafter. But, again, up to you when you want to grab that stuff. I know me, I like that Enduring Blades, and these ones show up as soon as I can get them. They're awesome. This one's nice, it's just other stuff was more important to me. Level 19, you're grabbing yourself Greater Penetrating Strikes again, because you have to be a fighter level 16. 19 minus 3 is 16. This is the soonest you can grab it. It's awesome. You're one of the few classes that will actually have access to that one. And again, it just adds to the other 5. So now you're up to ignoring 10 to that damage reduction. And for some frame of reference, there's something cast Stone Skin on themselves. That's DR10 / adamantine. If you don't have an adamantine dagger, they're absorbing 10 points of incoming damage every round, or every attack, guaranteed. Well, now with this on, I'm ignoring your Stone Skin. Chop, 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 chop. You gotta fucking love it. Notice also at level 19, you get for free as a Sword Saint perfect reflexes. Your initiative roll at 1d20. Remember, we also got a bonus to that for intelligence and our dexterity, so you can add those two numbers to the roll. So I get a 12 added to my 1d20, whatever that may be. Well, now that 1d20 is always a 20. So you're more likely than not going to have a very high initiative roll, and more likely than not be one of the first, if not the first person to attack every combat round. That's fucking sweet. Now, of course, that doesn't count surprise round and shit like that, but by and large, that's nice. That's real fucking nice. Level 20, you're finishing off strong with a nice weapon mastery. This is something they get that the other Magus don't. The other Magus, I prefer their buff, quite frankly, but this one's still okay. Two things that you get from this. One, you auto-confirm all your crits. So again, if you hit in the crit range, so again, the better the crit range, it's going to crit, period. The other thing you get is the multiplier of your weapon goes up 1. So times 2 becomes times 3. Times 3 weapon could be times 4. Times 4 could be times 5. You get the idea. So there's weapons out there that are that high. Scythe, for example, is a weapon that's a times 4 critical by default, but only crits on a nat goddamn 20. Yeah, you can get it to 19 and 20 with improved critical for a scythe, but it's a two-hander. It's probably for a strength build more than anything else. When you crit with it, though, and it does 5 times the damage, Jesus Christ, it's fucking sweet. So again, I can't tell you not to get it. The best suggestion I'd have for you, if you wanted to go for a better multiplier, go for a strength-based build instead of dex. You can still have dex, just not a lot. You can have like a 12 or a 14 here, but have a strength of 16 or higher. Go for a strength-based build and go for a one-handed weapon attack. Do not do two-handed like I'm doing here, or sorry, two-weapon like I have here. You do one-handed attack with something called a falcata. Falcata's weapon damage is like 1d6, 1d8, something like that. That don't matter. It's the crit range of a 19 and 20, which means if you have improved critical, it's just like your daggers here, so it'll be 17 to 20. But the critical multiplier on a falcata is naturally times 3. So when you get to level 20, it'd be a times 4. That's pretty cool. And falcatas look fucking sick. So again, if you wanted to crit fish and crit multiplier fish, I suppose, that would be a fun one. But again, it'd be more for a strength-based build because it is a heavier weapon. Having said all these things, now we need to talk about your mythic path. You said you wanted angel, and I can't tell you when these show up per se. This is why I waited till the end to talk about this part, buddy. You have to take mythic hero here and here. I'm assuming this is your main character, of course. So you take mythic hero, and then you pick angel for the last 8. For this first one here, because you're going for angel, I said, fuck it, might as well go for close to the heavens. And there's reasons to want this one. This one's actually baller. It's a ray spell, multiple times a day. Can be one of two things. If it's against an ally, it does damage. If it's against if it's against an ally, it heals damage. If it's against an enemy, it does damage. It's fucking sweet. And the damage scales as you level up your mythic ranks, which means it's going to hit like a fucking brick shit house, which is sweet. Notice at level 2, which means, again, you pick it here at level 1. At level 2, we get an upgrade where we become resistant. The person that has close to the heavens, which is us, we get a resistance to acid 20, resistance to cold 20, and we're immune to petrification now. It's pretty sweet. That's a nice little upgrade, in my opinion. Notice all mythic heroes and companions will get this bypass epic damage reduction. Again, that's the DRN, N standing for a number, / epic, which I'm assuming is in this game from the heavy boss fights and shit like that. So everyone has to have this. Otherwise, those boss fights are going to suck. Over here, we get these various mythic abilities and mythic feats. Some of them are here, some of them are here. Again, I get them backwards for who does what. But notice that I'm grabbing enduring spells here. This one here, I'm grabbing an extra mythic ability. So these are your mythic feats. One of the feats that you can pick is something called extra mythic ability. Hell, you can get an extra feat if you so choose. Seems dumb, but you can do that. But this extra mythic ability is fucking amazing because you can grab something really, really badass, like greater enduring spells, which is what I grab here. You don't see it, but it's there. This allows us to take the buffs that we're getting not only from our angel spell book, but also our sword saint spell book, and have them last for 24 fucking hours instead of 5 minutes. You can get this, I would assume, by level 1. This one only really works on spells that are an hour long or longer, like mage armor. Even if you drink it from a potion, it's a 1 hour buff. With this feat picked, or this ability picked, whatever the hell it is, you can literally have that last for 24 hours now. You can see the appeal of that. Then you grab the bigger version, the greater enduring spells here, by grabbing extra mythic ability, and then it'll open up the window of all these things again, and you can say, I want greater enduring spells. That really opens up a world of pain to the bad guys, because you literally now have buffs that you had limited number of spells a day anyway as a sword saint. Now you cast that shield spell on you, and instead of it lasting for 5, 6, 7 minutes, best case scenario, maybe 14 if you extend it, it's now 24 goddamn hours. So you wake up in the morning, you cast buff, 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 time to go to war, and you're just walking out like a goddamn glowing champion of ass whoop. Better than that, this Sword of Heaven that's coming at level 3, notice how we have Everlasting Flame way the fuck over here. These are your upgrades to your weapon. There's a variety of them. These are the 3 I'm just picking. And again, I'll let you choose as you see fit, but I recommend this one as soon as possible. This buffs your weapon. Normally, you can click it multiple times a day, but it's only a 1 minute buff. Everlasting Flame turns it into 1 minute per mythic rank. So at level 4, which is where you pick it up, that's a 4 minute buff. Who cares? You care, because once you get to level 5, it's a 5 minute buff. Oh wait, we have greater enduring spells by then, which again could have been here, here, or here, your choice. You get it by this point, greater enduring spells, and now that Sword of Heaven buff, which is fucking awesome in and of itself, is now a 24-hour buff. And you can click it again multiple times in a day if you so choose. So if someone strips the buff off you, you die, somehow it gets taken away from you, just reactivate it. 24 more hours, please. It's fucking badass. So you're going to love that. Notice, of course, we went with abundant casting. Once we became an angel, we get an angelic halo. We get, of course, our Sword of Heaven. We get some summons, and of course, our mythic spell book, our specific level 1 through 9 angel spell book. Eventually, it starts off at like 1 to 3, and then it will unlock as we rank up our angel all the way up to level 9 spells. Not a bunch of them, but some really good ones and a lot of good buffs. Definitely some heals in here. This is why I kind of dug this build. This would not be how I would take a sword saint, by the way. I would not go angel. I'd probably go something that would feel more like a superhero, so Eon or Zada probably would be solid choices. This one's, I'm warming up to it because there's a solid amount of buffs in there. Plenty of fucking spells, which of course with abundant casting and improved abundant casting, you're going to have even more of those, which is fucking sweet. And the buffs that they give you are spells that we normally don't have access to, like Divine Power. It's an amazing spell. It doesn't last long, and you're certainly not going to get it to last for no 24 fucking hours. But you can slot that 2, 3, 4 times, and I don't feel bad about that. And you'll be chopping and throwing some shit with some Divine Power on your character. So some serious fun to be had here. Notice that, of course, we had over on this side, we picked up something else. This is the thing I told you about when I said that there's ways to make your dexterity go into your damage. Weapon Finesse Mythic. You have to have Weapon Finesse, which we had at level 1, but once we unlock this, which is a long ways away, now all our dexterity modifier is added to our dagger attacks. That's why I can say double slice was necessary, because now it's really chiming in. And even until you get this, you still want double slice, so don't push double slice back just because you don't have this yet. The reason for that is you know, I'm only wearing right now a belt that increases my dex. You'd have spells that would buff your strength, or a belt or gear that would buff your strength too. So again, until you start using that high dexterity, you can still use your strength. It's just our strength sucks right now. Give yourself some strength gear, and you'll see more damage on this side and more damage on that side until you get that, what's it called? Weapon Finesse Mythic. Okay? Or Agile weapons for that matter. We'll do the same general thing. But that one's awesome, and you get that as soon as possible. Notice we also got 2 weapon fighting. This one is taking away our -2 penalty. Notice it says it lowers the penalty by 2. Get a little drink of coffee. Not coffee, soda. Good enough. It says it lowers it by 2. Why does it say lower it by 2 instead of just taking away the 2? Because if you did 2 weapon fighting with like a longsword and a longsword, which you could do, or a scimitar and a scimitar, and you want to be Dritz, you can do that fucking thing. But you'd be at a -4 and a -4. Because they're not light weapons, remember? The -2, or lessening it by 2, could have taken that -4 down to a -2 and a -2. So you could do scimitars and a strength build, or long swords and a strength build. That's on you, dude. Falcatas, hey, have at thee. But it's a massive penalty until you unlock this. And I would think that that would be a bad idea. And I like the fact that this takes the 2 penalty that I do have with my little daggers completely away. That's one of the reasons I actually have greater 2-weapon fighting on this build. The other reason I have greater 2-weapon fighting is because of this little fucktard. Notice that my iterative attacks, which means every attack after the first one with either hand. Remember, you have a full BAB attack, so again, if it's 15 and it's 15. Then the next one should be a 10 and a 10. That's a -5 and a -5. Then the next one after that would be a 5, 5 and a 5, because again, another -5 and another -5. Well, with flawless attacks, it changes the -5 penalty each step to only a -4. So follow the bouncing ball here by going back to our attacks. See how we're at 26, 22, and 18? That's why they're 4 away each step. If I didn't have that, it would be 26, 21, and 16. So this last one would be a 16. That's a lot lower. And then over here, it'd be the same exact thing. It'd be 26, 21, 16. Again, that last one is a lot lower. That's why I did not like greater 2-weapon fighting on my previous build in Kingmaker, because that's just too fucking low. Well, A, we have all these angel spells that can buff our swing, like Divine Power, Divine Favor, Bless, Aid, a bunch of other fucking shit. So again, I'm not too worried about the buff pushing that number up. But I'll happily get that greater 2-weapon fighting now that I know that that should have been a 16. It's now an 18. And it actually should have been worse than that, because remember, I should have a -2 to all these attacks and a -2 to all these attacks because of 2-weapon fighting with light weapons. But remember, I have this, taking away that -2 from all of my attacks. So technically speaking, that last attack should be 4 points lower. But because of this, and because of this, they're not. That's fucking sweet. So I'll happily get those fucking 2-weapon fighting, improved 2-weapon fighting, and greater 2-weapon fighting feats for this build. Notice we even got Speed of Light. Now when we buff our weapon, I'm going to show you here the fact that it's going to be like a full 24-hour buff. Speed of Light is the other buff that I like, as well as Grand Blessing. Speed of Light, this is the soonest you can grab it because it's just that powerful. But Grand Blessing, first let's talk about it. When you have Sword of Heaven on, it does a variety of things. One, you do extra damage, holy damage with your weapon, the one weapon you buff, your main hand weapon. Second, any spells that we do that do either damage or healing get extra 2 dice of damage or 2 extra dice of healing. So if it's a Cure Light Wound spell, that's 1d8 of healing. With this buff on, it would jump up to 3d8. Just because. So that's impressive. That's turning a Cure Light Wound spells technically into the equivalent of Cure Serious Wounds. That's a level 1 spell being treated like it's a level 3 spell, basically, is what I'm telling you. And that's pretty damn powerful. I thought that was cool, but it gets better than that. Remember, healing spells can be used to hurt undead, but also your damaging spells. We do have those. Fireball, Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, all kinds of good ones, and ones that also are in our Angel spellbook now. And again, they do a solid amount of damage. So look for your spells that do more than just D6 of damage, because you're going to get 2 more dice of it. So if it says D4, like a Corrosive Touch, that's crap. Because the 5D4 now turns into 7D4, ooh, ring-a-ding-ding. That's like an extra 8 damage, maybe. Fuck that. You want the one that says 5d10 or 6d12. You know, there's a 12d6 for like a Dragon's Breath, but that's 12 dice that are 6-sided dice. That's the d6 part. So having Sword of Heaven on would turn that into a 14d6 Dragon's Breath spell. Still good. You'll still appreciate it, but you're looking for the shit that's d8, d10, d12, maybe, if you can find it. They do exist. So it's pretty fucking badass. And again, so long as this buff is on you. Normally it's 1 minute a stretch. When you get this, it's 1 minute per mythic rank, so it's 4 minutes, it's 5 minutes, whatever. But once we get to here, it's no longer 5 minutes, baby. It's all goddamn day. So your spells and your weapon is going to swing for some serious damage. Then you get Grand Blessing. And instead of the damage, the 2d6, the 2d10, 2d12, or whatever we got for healing or damage buff, it just says, fuck it, maximize it. So if it's supposed to be 2d6, it's now 12. Just add it. If it's supposed to be 2d8 of healing, like I just said for Cure Light Wounds, remember it says 1d8 goes to 3d8. It would be 1d8 plus 16. You'll see it, and I'll show this to you. That's why I damaged these characters so you can see how this works. But that's amazing. That's a fucking massive amount of healing just given to you for like low-level spells, let alone the higher-level ones. Just free of charge. Then, and again, because that works for healing, that would imply that it works for the reverse, which means the healing, when you use a healing spell to damage the undead. So again, that would still be an extra 16 points of fucking damage to that undead. A really nice way to just soften the fuckers up. Then, Speed of Light, again, as soon as we grab this one, we get the equivalent of a haste spell on ourselves. And again, remember, this is so long as the Sword of Heaven is up on us, which we can make 24 fucking hours at a stretch now, and do that multiple times a day. So you can have the equivalent of haste on you, but it's not even haste. It's better than haste because we get 2 additional attacks around. So instead of having 3 attacks in my main hand and 3 attacks in my offhand, I got 5 and 3 for you, son. And I can get that to 6 and 3 for you if I want to. I just have to cast another spell called Transformation, which you do have access to as a Magus. It's a level 6 spell. You can't cast spells once you cast it. But man, if it's the last fucking fight and you know you just want to go choppity, buff up with your Sword of Heaven for the 24-hour buff, if you have it, of course. Speed of Light, of course, too. And then activate the Transformation spell. And you will, it's Tensor's Transformation. They just don't call it that. You will fucking shred shit. It's fucking amazing. You just become a murder fucking hobo like no one's business, son. Amazing upgrade here. And sadly, this last part is broken. So this will have to be submitted as a bug report. So it says you get the 2 additional attacks. That's true. Notice this part. Making all spells of level 7, which are almost every spell you fucking got, or lower, quickened as though using the quicken spell feat. And remember, this works for the entire duration of this buff, which is a 24-hour buff thanks to our fucking enduring spells and greater enduring spells feats that we picked. That's fucking money. If that actually works, you just become a swift casting son of a bitch. It's amazeballs. Clearly broken. Maybe they'll take that out. But don't tell them about the enduring spells and greater enduring spells working on the Sword of Heaven, please, because I'm kind of digging that shit right now. But that's amazing. Then Guide of the Faithful is the last one I picked. And again, it's not the only choice, but at that point I was kind of running out of shit, let's just be honest. This one's amazing, though. For every attack we hit a bad guy, for 1 minute, the target's marked. They have a minus 40 to any stealth. Remember, invisibility is nothing more than a plus 20 to stealth. So if they have vanish, invisibility, or greater invis on, their stealth is up 20 points. We've just lowered it by 40. So we've basically taken away their invis, is what I just told you. Then we also lowered their armor class by 4. That doesn't stack on itself, but it just refreshes the 1 minute. So you just start hitting a guy. Remember, prescient attack, arcane accuracy, dimension strike if you had that, which I didn't pick. Any way that you hit them, once you have that buff, the Sword of Heaven on you, with that weapon that's buffed, now they're fucking marked, and they're taking hits more easily because their armor class went down by 4. There is no save. That's fucking sweet. Now, of course, it's the tier 10 ability, so of course it's tits. Notice your Halo here. We activate this, and we'll get a bonus to our armor class equal to the Mythic rank plus 1 to armor class, half the Mythic rank. So 10, so 5 plus 1. So 6 is the best case scenario for your armor class bump here. For you and your team, this works on you as well. It says each ally, but it actually centers on you, and therefore you get it as well. It's kind of a shame that it doesn't show up as an icon when we activate it, but everybody does get it. And bonus to your saving throws are against evil creatures. So again, another plus 6 to your saves across the board for you and your team, so long as they're near you, making you the focal point of the team, which is fucking awesome. Then we get these upgrades. Piercing Rays is one of the ones that I want. Well, the Halo's active, which is all the fucking time because it's just a toggle. Doesn't cost you anything, just leave it on. All enemies in 50 feet suffer penalty to spell resistance now. No save. Equal to 1 plus half our Mythic rank. So 1 plus 5, best case scenario, so a minus 6 to their spell resistance. That's basically what I just told you right now with this Halo on and your level 10 Angel, that this is a minus 6 to their spell resistance. That's the equivalent of spell penetration, which is a feat, greater spell penetration, which is another feat, and another feat which doesn't exist that would give you another plus 2 to spell pen, because that's what those other 2 feats just gave you. So a plus 2, plus 4, and a plus 6. That's what this is basically giving you. And we're not done yet. Then all the evil motherfuckers as well take a penalty to their saving throws equal to half that penalty. So if it's 6 is the best case scenario, they take a penalty to their saves of minus 3. Softening them up for your spells and your teammates' spells. You can see the appeal of Piercing Rays, I'm sure. Flame of Life. This one here was, I didn't know what else to pick. There's some good stuff in here, but this was the only one that I'm like, sure, whatever. What this one does is, and I'm going to demonstrate to you here in a minute, if, while my Halo's up, my teammates take damage, they will heal equal to my Mythic rank. So in this case, 10. So if they've taken like a big spike of damage, obviously their health is really low now, but if they take a big spike of damage, 10 health will come back on them. And that's kind of cool. Now, of course, that builds over time. So again, right now it's 7, then it'll be 8, then 9, then 10. But as long as that halo's on and there's no reason it shouldn't be, you're always healing your team while they're taking damage. It doesn't seem to work for you, I don't think, but I'm okay with that. And again, you have spells beyond that to heal them. So this is another way to keep them topped off, so to speak, without us having to waste our time being the healer, because you're not the healer. You have healing spells, which we'll show you here in a minute, but by and large, this is going to be good enough and to keep them from fucking dying instantly kind of shit is what we're going for. Notice I also have Boundless Healing. This one is working and broken all at the same time. So it works in so far as that it takes away, excuse me, it takes away the cap, the level cap of a spell. For example, Cure Light Wounds heals 1d8 plus 1 per caster level, maximum of 5. So it'd be 1d8 plus 5 is its best case scenario. This takes away that plus 5 cap, the limit. So I'm caster level 20, Angel. So when I use a Cure Light Wound spell, it'll do 1d8 plus 20 because I'm level 20. That's awesome. That makes those spells extremely powerful. It says also that you can reach these spells, which means you can throw them at a distance up to 30 feet. That does not work. I'm here to tell you right now. That's a shame, because that would be fun, because it'd be like Cure Light Wounds. It'd be almost like Healing Word. If you understand what that spell is from D&D, it kind of feels like that once it's a reach spell. But they don't have it, doesn't work. Again, a bug report will be issued. I'm sure someone has bitched about it, I'm sure. But I will do the same thing, just to remind them. And if it's nothing more than they take away that text, because it will confuse people. If they can't fix it, fine. But they should be able to. But that's an amazing upgrade here for that. And notice, that works in conjunction with our Sword of Heaven. Remember, that allows us to get extra dice of healing. So now remember that 3d8. Remember that 1d8 goes to 3d8. But that plus 5 will now go, thanks to this, all the way up to plus 20. So I'll get 1d8 plus 16, because remember I have the Grand Blessing, maximizing those 2d8 dice, remember? So that's why it turns it into 16, and then another 20 on top of that once I get to level 10 Angel. So a Cure Light Wound spells will heal for guaranteed 1d8 plus 16 plus 20 for me. It's 36. 37 is the minimum health that I can heal with a Cure Light Wound spell. This is pretty fucking cool. I just thought that was worth mentioning. Notice we also grabbed Archmage Armor. Now, we don't have this spell, and you may be like, well, that's stupid. But this works with potions, scrolls, wands. And that spell is something you need because you do not have armor. When you use that, remember, with our Enduring Spells and Greater Enduring Spell, hell, just this one, it turns into a 24-hour buff. And what this does is it takes the plus 4 to your Mage Armor and adds your Mythic rank to it as well. So it's plus 4 plus up to 10. Excuse me, talking so fast and making myself sick. So that's a 14 armor class bump once you get to a level 10 Mythic rank, and you do nothing more than chug a potion of Mage Armor, which again is a 50 gold piece potion. By the time you get to this, you have so much of this shit stockpiled, you might as well just grab all 99 from the vendor. You'll be amazing. 24-hour buffs every day you wake up, Mage Armor, whoop, 14 armor bonus, poof, problem solved. You're going to be a goddamn tank, son. Notice, after all this, the weapon finesse, the 2-weapon fighting, and the flawless attack, and these can be taken in various orders. I'd rather you take weapon finesse sooner because you really need to get that dex modifier working for you for some damage. But that's on you. Then we work on the problems with swinging and having a penalty, and also working on our iterative attacks. Notice we have something else that is a rando thing to grab here. This one's called Rupture Restraints. This one's a solid upgrade. 3 times a day, any of these effects on me as a free action. Notice that. That's not a swift action, son. That's a free action. I can automatically dispel that. And that includes Paralyze, which means if you're locked up, and usually that means you're fucked, I can activate this 3 times a day, of course. Click. I'm not paralyzed anymore. It just dispels the effect. Poof. Problem solved, and I run back into battle and kill the motherfucker that just locked me down, because screw you, dick. That's a nice way. It's like freedom of movement, but doesn't last long. It's like an instantaneous debuffing of this. A removal of this debuff. But I still like it. And again, it's late in the build, but I still maintain it's something you want. And again, solid upgrades. There's other stuff. I don't know what's missing here, but there's other stuff as well. Notice that our aura gets better over time. So we literally get like a massive bonus to armor class for me and my team. Basically, it's the equivalent of an AoE protection from alignment or protection from evil, more likely than not, spell. And then some. So just more and more and more, which is really, really nice. It's one way to protect you and your team. And again, so you'll always have that the halo, excuse me, up. That's what this halo is right here. Now you'll notice, like I said, you don't see it adding a buff to me or my team. It is a toggle, but once you have it on, you should always leave it on. There's ways to make it go off, so I leave it in my tray. But let's just show you what I mean about buffage. So first, here's your arcane strike and piranha strike on. Notice how your damage just went up from 12s to 26s. Okay, part of that is because you have that penalty, piranha strike, -4 to all your attacks. Again, those numbers went down significantly now, right? But that's a +8 to your damage for every one of those attacks now. So it's a solid damage increase. Then we activated arcane strike, and that's just a straight up +5 by the end of the build. So you got 8 and 5, so you got 13 more damage just added on top of what you had there. So you're sitting at a 13 and a 13, now you're at a 26 and a 26. Pretty damn sweet, I'd say. From there, the more dex you have, the more damage you'll have. The more intelligence you have when they're flat-footed, prescient attack, remember, the more damage you'll have. And we've yet to talk about buffing your weapon. But first, let's show you the weapon buff. Your Sword of Heaven. That's it right there. Notice 24 hours, baby. That's a 24-hour buff now, and that's because of enduring spells and greater enduring spells. We grabbed those as soon as we could. Yeah, we could have pushed it back maybe a little, because you really don't get Everlasting Flame till here, so you could have grabbed it maybe here. So enduring spells and then greater enduring spells. But I'd rather have it sooner than later. And some of your spells, by the way, for instance, some of your spells like Enlarge Person, or better than that for you, Reduce Person and Shield and Magic Weapon and Expeditious Retreat, those low-level spells are all 1 minute per caster level. They will not become 24-hour buffs until you get greater enduring spells. So you needed both of them as soon as possible, in my mind anyway. That's why we grabbed them at ASAP. Same with Blur, same with Bull Strength, Cast Grace, Bear's Endurance, Mirror Image, same true, but this will wear off way before 24 hours, and let's just say it. But still, I'm happy to have it for 24 hours, so it means I can wake up, cast it on myself, and then scroll through the fucking dungeon. When it wears off, I'll just recast it. I'll probably slot it multiple times. Other spells, though, that will never be, for you, a 24-hour buff: Displacement. Things that are 1 round per level. Haste, 1 round per level. You will not get that. Greater Magic Weapon, though, on the other hand, 1 hour per level. And the good news is the devs were smart enough to add something that was missing from Kingmaker. When you cast this spell and also Magic Weapon, either of them, it will ask you which weapon do you want to buff, the main hand weapon or the offhand weapon. That's important, because remember, we can't buff our offhand weapon with this stuff. The Bane weapon, the Enduring Blades, the Arcane Weapon Enhancement, that only works on our main hand weapon. So if you want to have Shit Dagger number 1 over here do better than what it's doing right now, which is just a crappy +1, see how I've already made it a temp enhancement +5? That's how I did that, as I cast a spell on it. I literally made it Greater Magic Weapon, which is +5. So that's why it's swinging better, that's why it's hitting harder. And this one over here, I just buffed it with my natural ability to buff it, which is like this thing here. I can also make it a Bane weapon. Like I said, I can also make it a fire weapon. So fire damage, 1d6 of fire damage, 1d6 of cold, 1d6 of electric. I can make it a keen weapon. I don't need to now because I have improved critical. I can make it a enduring blade, which means it just lasts longer. So instead of it being a 1 minute buff, it's now 1 minute per caster level. So again, just toggles that you're activating. I can make it a speed weapon. I don't need it because now I'm hasted like a motherfucker. So again, you'll see I have 5 fucking attacks and then 3 more here, because this is the one that's giving my Sword of Heaven buff. That's the greater speed buff that I'm getting for that upgrade for my Sword of Heaven. Just amazing. And again, if I cast Transformation on myself, these numbers would all get better. So would these, and I would get 1 more extra attack over here, just because my BAB jumps to a 20 instead of the lowly 15 that it is right now. That's the best case scenario right now, is 15. I can get it up to a 20 with the casting of 1 spell, and it's an amazing spell. Now, after to do that, I can't cast spells, so it's the last spell you're going to want to cast, and it's going to look like this one right here. Transformation. That's your guy. Notice I did not grab every spell. I just grabbed a smattering of stuff. You will grab every spell that's available to you, scribe it into your book, 1 through 6. Notice your angel spells, 1 through 9, We have some good spells. Remember, your buffs don't overlap if they have the same category. So if it's a morale buff, look for the best one. If it's a luck bonus, look for the best one. Don't try to use divine favor and divine power together, because one is a luck bonus to attack and damage. The other is a luck bonus, which is better than it, to attack and damage and hit points and speed effect and blah blah blah. So divine favor is the poor man's version of divine power. That doesn't mean you don't slot it. Remember, you're going to run out of those divine powers because they only last for 1 round per caster level anyway, so that's like 2 minutes, maybe 4 if you extend it. And that's it. So when you run out of those spells, switch back to divine favor. At least it's a bonus, and in this case it'll be a +3. Best case scenario, +3 to your swing, +3 to your damage. With all the buffs you have, whether we're talking bonus to your swing, bonus to your damage, or bonus to your armor, as well as immunities from your angel spell book, very few things are going to be a problem for you, buddy. You have spells like Aid, Temp HP, bonus to your swing. Again, doesn't stack with Bless, but Bless is an AoE version. Because it's a minute per level, this is a spell that I can cast. Me and my team will get it. Thanks to greater enduring spells, we'll have it for 24 fucking hours. Same with Aid. It's single target, though. Delayed Poison, or the communal version. I can cast this one here. So it lasts for an hour. It'll be 24-hour buff for me and my team if I cast that, thanks to enduring spells. That's amazing. So know which spells you have that are 1 minute per level, 10 minutes per level, an hour per level, or things that are like prayer, 1 round per level. Because these are the ones that you will not be able to extend to a 24-hour period. There is a way to do it, just not with your build. You'd have to be Cleric 20, Angel 10, merging your spellbook, which means you'd be caster level 30. You'd have to endure this or extend the spell, so you double the duration of it. That would turn it into a 6-minute buff. And the minute it becomes, or the second, I should say, it becomes greater than 5 minutes, thanks to enduring spells and greater enduring spells, it now becomes a 24-hour buff. So it is possible to have an Oracle or a Cleric with the Angel Mythic path be a fucking 24-hour a day monster. And man, that's going to be some fun builds, I'm telling you right now. Anyway, look at all those stuff. Know that you're going to have a variety of spells to pick from. And then remember, those abundant spell casting and improved abundant spell casting gives me 4 extra spells here, 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 and here. So that's 12, 24 free spell slots just for the Angel book. Same with the Magus. 4 more here, 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 and here. Yes, there was another feat we could have grabbed. It's called Greater Abundant Spellcasting, but it doesn't help us with the Magus because we don't have any 7, 8, or 9 spells for the Magus spellbook. But for the Angel, it would have worked because you see we only have 4, 4, and 4. That could have been 8, 8, and 8. But I'm fine with that. And honestly, the spells that we're talking about now, like this one here, which is amazing, it's an AoE buff for 1 hour. Again, with enduring spells, that turns into a 24-hour buff for you and your team. You wake up, Fortress of the Faithful, and look what this shit does. It gives you Aegis of the Faithful, but AoE style for you and your whole team for 24 hours with the build that I have for you. But what does Aegis of the Faithful give you? Shield spell, Shield of Faith spell, protection from arrows, displacement, that's 50% mischance, son. Resist fire and cold and electric and acid and even sonic, because fuck the game. And instead of it being for 1 minute per caster level, remember you have greater enduring spells. That will become, once it becomes 5 minutes per level, which is really easy. I mean, you have to be Angel level 5, which you're Angel level 6 at the start. You would have this and it would last you for 24 hours. This one is the single target version. The one at level 9, the Fortress of the Faithful, was the AoE version. And again, that could be a 24-hour buff for the whole fucking team. Remember, shield spell. +4 to your shield. If you have a shield like her already, that doesn't help her one bit. Because chances are the shield she has is better. However, she's now immune to magic missile. Shield of Faith is something we could all benefit from. That's basically deflection bonus up to +5. Yeah, there's rings of deflection, or protection, excuse me, +4, 5, and whatever. But not everyone has those, and those are pricey. This just gives it to them for fucking 24 hours. That's an amazing upgrade. And then, you know, the protection from the elemental damage, the resistance to fire, cold, blah, blah, blah. That's upwards of 30 DR, or damage reduction, for those types of elements. That's a lot of elements that you're just sucking up damage from, son. That's nice. And that's not just the only spell that you have that buffs you in that way. Avenger's Blessing is a solid upgrade. Look at this one. Again, single target for you or a teammate, can cast on anybody. You get Divine Power, Holy Aura, and Greater Heroism. Only for 1 round per caster level, so 20 rounds for you right now because you're at 20 level Angel. But still, that's a nice all in one spell. I mean, think about it this way: whenever you get those spells, like it's like a running gag on YouTube. There's a meme out there where people are, oh, there's the bad guy. I have to prepare myself for this fight, and you see a guy like casting 17 fucking spells on himself to buff up for this one fucking fight. It's annoying as hell, I grant you, but it's one of those things that we just have to do. Well, here's an example of one where it's multiple spells in one. Cast this spell and you're damn near ready to rock and roll. Between that and your Aegis of the Faithful, that 1-2 punch, and you just added like 17 spells to your character right off the bat just from casting 2 spells. And tell me that shit ain't funny. There's other ones here besides the damaging spells and the healing spells. Again, you'll look through all these to see what you have access to, but there's no wrong answer here. But remember to look for those spells for the dice of damage. The 20d6, remember we get 2 extra dice of damage, and it's full damage, remember? So we'll have 20d6 plus 2d6, where that 2d6 is guaranteed to be 12. So it'll be 20d6 plus 12 damage to everybody. Storm of Justice, it does the same as Bolt of Justice. Now I bring that to your attention because look at Bolt of Justice. This one is a confusing one. It's 1d6 per caster level, so 20d6 because we're level 20, caster level 20. See that? So it'll be 20d6 against your target. Or if they're evil, it's 20d8. Or if they're an evil outsider or undead, it's 20d10. Wait, we're not done. If it's a demon lord or an evil dragon or a lord of the undead, like all these fucking things, it does 20d12 plus 2d12 of damage maximized. That's 20d12 plus 24 damage against that motherfucker. And that's for Bolt of Justice, let alone the Big Brother version, Storm of Justice, which is an AoE version of it. So walk into a room with all those undead and the Lich Lord motherfucker sitting in the back corner being a total D-bag to you, Storm of Justice's ass with your aura, your little halo thing going on, and boom, shit ton of damage. Piss him right off. Super fun. So let's show you real quick, though, a couple things. One, let's show you the heal. I wanted to show you... Well, first, let's show you the heal that happens if the target takes damage.
Am I at my limit?
Wait for it. Give it to her. There's that plus 10. 10 ranks. Plus 10. That's what happens. It takes a while to kick in because it's time related. So it's not instantaneous like you take damage and then you heal. But if she took damage in that round, she'll heal 10. So again, that's something that's going to happen. Do the same with her, but if I hit her, she'll probably fucking straight up die from it. I don't want her to do that. But let's show you a heal spell. For example, low level Cure Light Wound spell. Again, should be 1d8 plus 5 damage normally. How much is it actually? 1d8 plus 20, because I'm level 20, plus 16 because of 2d8 at full strength. 41, baby. That's a 36. That's 37 was the minimum. 36 and 8 would be 44 would have been the maximum on that fucker. That's an amazing level 1 spell. And again, it's partly because of the buff here, partly because of my halo. I can't remember. Point is, I'm fucking healing like a boss and damaging as well. Also, notice here's your. Here, let's actually step back and zap her with a damaging spell. Notice the damage I do is for cast acid cantrips much better. 1d3 plus 6 again. 2d3 of damage, full strength. That's where the 6 came from. So that's 1d3 plus 6. 8 damage. 9 would have been the best case scenario. So again, hurt her solid, and again, she healed right back from it, which I didn't want her to do. I wanted to do that. And I wanted her to be damaged and not healed from it because I wanted to show you this. You're close to heaven. This is your, let's get some distance between us. This is your ray spell that you get at level 1, close to the heavens. It can either heal a teammate, doesn't matter if they're good, bad, neutral, doesn't fucking matter, just that they're a teammate. They can be healed with it. And again, it scales as you rank up. If it's a bad guy, it will damage. It's a ray spell that damages them. And again, it ranks up based on your mythic rank. So watch what it looks like, though. It's fucking amazing. Oh, it just hit you with all kinds of cool shit. And how much was it? 24d6 plus 12. Remember, 2 extra dice of damage, so 2d6 at full strength. That's why the plus 12. But look at that fucking amount of healing you did. Jesus Christ, man. And again, it could have been the same amount of damage for a bad guy. 24d6 plus 12 damage to a bad guy. And you get multiple castings of that in a goddamn day. Tell me that ain't just fucking cool. From there, let's just show you like a quick buff to show you how you do it. 24 hours. Again, it doesn't work on everything, like prayer, for example. Also, on your spell book for your angel, there's other buffs to talk about. Like you'll start getting these weird ones, these new spells. Shield of Demonkind, Ward from Disease, and again, you'll look through them, but by and large, most of these are like 10-minute buffs. And again, with greater enduring spells, they become 24-hour buffs. Not only are they good buffs, but like Ward from Disease, you'll see how it makes you or a teammate immune from diseases for X amount of minutes. Again, 24 hours a day, best case scenario. But if you go to the very next level, you'll see it has the communal version. So the one that can be cast on the whole team for, again, 24 hours a day. Ward of Unclean, a nice upgrade. Now, not only immune to disease and poison, but now you're also immune to nausea and sickened. Again, 24 hours a day if you buff the way I've done. But again, if you go to level 5, you'll see the same exact spell, teammate friendly, so the whole goddamn team, and again, everyone can be protected for 24 fucking hours. Ward from Harm, same exact protection, nausea, sicken, disease, poison. Now they've added ability damage and ability drain. Then, of course, the AoE version. Then, of course, you have the better version after that, where we now become immune to fatigue and exhaustion. Now, think about what I've just said. At level 7, you'll see that we have the communal version. This could be cast on the whole fucking team at the start of the day. For 24 hours, fatigue and exhaustion will never affect your team. Well, what does that mean? It means that -2, that -6 to your strength and your dex that show up from fatigue or from exhaustion or from effects, from spells that would cause fatigue or exhaustion, just aren't a thing for you anymore. For 24 hours a day, you're ignoring it. Imagine marching on the open battlefield, because you got a huge fucking place to traverse, right? You got an overland map to go from place to place. What if your team gets tired? You get jumped in the fucking forest because you're pushing your luck a little bit and everyone's exhausted. That's a -6 to every fucking strength and dex stat for the whole damn team. Not for us, baby. We're immune. But what if the spell wears off and then you become fatigued and exhausted? Well, we have ways around that. All you have to do is go back to level 4. This spell right here. Restoration cures blah blah blah. Also eliminates any fatigue or exhaustion suffered by the target. Now, yeah, it's costly. 2 diamond dust is not cheap. But you cast that multiple times on you and the whole fucking party after the fight. Remove the exhaustion or the fatigue. And then reapply a 24-hour immunity to fatigue and exhaustion, baby. You have multiple castings a fucking day. You can see my point. You're going to have some serious fun just marching over the goddamn battlefields. You're like the tireless army because of you and your fucking badass sword saint, man. I hope this explains to you what I was thinking. I want to say this is Shaitan. It was the name of the character, the name of the person that wanted this particular build, and I want to say it's Morgenstern, something like that was your last name. But it'll be in the title of the video. But with that, my name is Brother Mutant. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. Tell me what you think of this build. Would you guys play a Sword Saint Angel? Would you play a Sword Saint something else like an Aeon or an Azada like I was planning on doing? Again, put that comments down below, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye now.